Hey everybody, how's it going? So I wanted to go over this very odd piece of news with you all and get an idea of what you think. I think there's a lot more to be discussed here than just what is in the article. So this is from CWB Chicago. Security guard who shot man 3 times acted in self-defense because the victim wasn't wearing a COVID mask, the lawyer says. A liquor store security guard was acting in self-defense when he shot a customer 3 times because the customer was putting other lives at risk by not wearing a COVID mask, the guard's private defense attorney said during a bond court hearing Wednesday. The argument did not sway Cook County Judge Mary Marubio. The victim fled the store, fell outside, followed by the defendant who, according to the surveillance video, shot a second time. The defendant then paces back and forth and shot a third time, Marubio said, before ordering 42-year-old Chester Holmes held without bail. Holmes, who is barred from possessing a weapon because he is a 4-time convicted felon and registered child sex offender, was working with an armed security guard at the store on the 6,000 block of South Racine when a 28-year-old man walked in without a COVID mask around 9:53 a.m. on Monday, according to Assistant State Attorney General Darrell Auguste. Holmes said the victim argued about the mask policy, and the victim eventually left. He then turned around and walked back in. When he did, Holmes met him with a drawn handgun and shot him, August said. The victim fell to the ground outside the store. Holmes, who defense attorney Jonathan Feldman said has a big heart and is a big, kind-hearted man, really now, shot the man again, and then paced around and shot him a third time before running away, according to Auguste. Because again, at that point, you've shot him twice. The COVID may still get you. He's still not wearing a mask. Shoot again. And then paced around a third time before running away, according to Auguste. The victim, who was shot in the stomach, arm, and leg, was taken to a hospital where surgeons removed part of his intestines, Auguste said. Chicago cops heard the gunfire and responded quickly enough to see Holmes running away, according to Auguste. He ditched his gun and security vest along the way and later told arresting officers where they could find him, Auguste said. Holmes also allegedly admitted to shooting the victim. This is obviously going to be a self-defense case, Friedman said after hearing the allegations. He called the circumstances basically a customer who's unruly who wants to put others' lives at risk by not wearing a COVID mask. Holmes, Friedman argued, reacted in self-defense to a man who wasn't wearing the mask. Auguste said Holmes was convicted of sexually assaulting a 6-year-old girl and sexually abusing a 15-year-old girl in 2003. He also served 2 prison terms for failing to follow sex offender registration requirements, according to Auguste. That's not me, Holmes said as Auguste detailed the specific acts he was accused of committing against the girls. Friedman said Holmes was fully cooperative with police, indicating he had an innocent mindset with nothing to hide. Prosecutors charged Holmes with attempted murder, aggravated battery by discharging a firearm, and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon. So let's dig into this. So there's many different ways that you could come at this case. The first is, what is self-defense? Typically, self-defense is, in my mind, doing something that is somewhat equal or appropriate to the threat. So if somebody if somebody pushes me and I punch them, fine. If somebody pushes me and I take out a knife and I slit their throat and cut their head off, that is, some people would say that's going overboard. Other people would say, hey, he shouldn't hit you, he got his. That really depends on where you are. So for instance, in Maryland, and again, I'm not saying that what he did is okay. I'm just trying to trying to frame the discussion by going over the different topics here. So in Maryland, if someone walks into your store and then hits you, and then they turn around to walk out and you hit them, you are considered to be equally at fault with them. I know this for a fact based on an experience that one of my students had told me about a while ago and how he had to deal with this. He would be considered equally at fault. Whereas in Texas, if someone walks into your store, hits you, and you, hit them back, you're not equally at fault. Further, if someone breaks into your house in certain areas of the country and then they go to run away, if you shoot them or hit them, you're more at fault than they are. However, in Texas, if someone breaks into your house, even if they start running away, you can shoot them. You're allowed to shoot them. I mean, the police may actually come by and say, why didn't you shoot him? This is an interesting case that I know of where someone had his house broken into. The person who broke into his house was smaller than him, so he hit him, then called the police. And when the cops came by, they said, why didn't you shoot him? And it's like, because I didn't think that was necessary. The guy thought it was illegal because he had moved to Texas from another state where self-defense laws are different. So let's take it to this point. Now, the next thing that we have to discuss here is what is appropriate. So, for instance, if I take a knife out and you shoot me, that's somewhat appropriate. Because I could my chances of killing you with this knife are very high. Whereas if I don't have a mask on, what are my chances of killing you with COVID? How do you know if I have COVID or don't have COVID? Would it be different if I was vaccinated, had a negative COVID test that day and walked in the store versus me walking in the store and then walking up to you and saying, I don't like you, I'm going to cough on you, by the way, I'm COVID positive and unvaccinated? Would it be more justifiable to shoot someone in the latter instance than the former instance? Again, if someone has HIV and they walk into a store, that doesn't matter. If someone has HIV, says they have HIV, gives themselves a paper cut and starts running at me to rub their blood on me, that may be a mildly different scenario. And in that situation, would I be warranted to shoot them rather than just hit them? There's a lot of questions that come up here, because if someone if you just take away the COVID mask for a second, let's say you remove the COVID mask, and to be clear, I think in this situation, the person who was shooting the guy who was unmasked is an absolute fucking lunatic, based on the fact that A, he kept shooting even when the guy was outside the fucking store, B, the fact that he has an insane criminal history that shouldn't have even allowed him to possess a firearm to begin with. I think the guy that did the shooting here is wrong. However, what I want to discuss here, when you think about it, is if someone comes into your property and you tell them, here are the conditions to be on my property, and then they disobey you, they say, no, I'm not going to follow that rule and I'm going to walk on your property anyway, there are areas of the country where you would be allowed to shoot them. If someone comes onto a property that you own or that you are guarding, and you tell them, you cannot be on this property without following this rule, they don't follow that rule, you tell them to get off the property, there are parts of the country where you would be within your rights to shoot that person if they do not leave your property. Now here, it seems crazy because it's over a COVID mask. And again, a COVID mask is different than a punch in the face. Although then again, COVID has a greater chance to kill you than a punch in the face. But then again, it depends. Did you hit the guy in the back of the head or did you hit the guy in the jaw? Like, this all starts to get really into a gray area and really jumbled, depending on the details of the case. Now, in this case, in my opinion, it's easy to say that the guy who did the shooting was out of his mind. And I think that the judge was right to say this is insane with a defense of self-defense. It says here, the argument did not sway Cook County Judge Mary Marubio. And I'm glad that it didn't sway her. A, he kept shooting him even after he was out of the store. B, the guy has a crazy criminal history of touching kids, and he shouldn't have been allowed to have a gun to begin with based on his criminal history and his history with children. I think that this is an open and shut case of this guy using a COVID mask as self-defense as a way to get out of the fact that he probably has other issues and was just looking to shoot someone. That's my take on this. But what if it was a different situation? What if the person didn't keep shooting when the guy left the store? What if the person who did the shooting was, an ex-Marine Corps member who had served in the Marine Corps and had a perfect record and was sitting in that store? Someone who didn't have any criminal history, someone who did have strong ties in the community. What if he only did one shot when the person said, "I'm not leaving. I'm walking back onto the property that you're here to guard," without listening to your rules, and shot him? How would the news article have been then? And how will we consider COVID going forward? So if I walk into a store and I am sick and I don't have a mask, you wouldn't shoot me over it. But you would. But the argument is being presented when it comes to COVID. It's a really interesting one, and it really does beg the question as to what self-defense is in this instance. Because I don't think we've ever been at a point in our society where somebody would ever even try to claim self-defense because someone walked into a store who may have a respiratory virus, but we have not confirmed has a respiratory virus, whose vaccination status we do not know. The person who walked in, again, for all we know, that person could have tested negative that morning and had in their COVID test and been vaccinated. It's really weird, and it's going to set a weird precedent going forward. And I'm very curious what all of you in the comments think of this particular case. Not just this particular case, but what this may mean for the future going forward. That's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.